Thank you. I'll quit while I'm ahead, you know. Lovely to be back in Dublin, and lovely to be back at the Helix. The first one to control perception is controlling the perception of reality itself. Now, if we don't understand the very reality that we're experiencing and interacting with, how can we understand anything? We live not in a world, but in a band of frequency, actually in a band of information within that frequency. But we are aware and live within, in terms of our perception, a tiny, tiny fraction of it. This scene from The Matrix is absolutely spot on.
Right now, we're inside a computer program?
Is it really so hard to believe?
Morpheus and Neo are in a computer simulation akin to this. And Neo said,
This isn't real?
"This isn't real?" And Morpheus said,
What is real? How do you define real? If you're talking about what you can feel, what you can smell, what you can taste and see, then real is simply electrical signals interpreted by your brain.
And that is all this reality is.
You've been living in a dream world, Neo.
This reality is nothing like we think it is. Up to the 1920s, mainstream science said there was one galaxy, the Milky Way. Less than 100 years later, the highest estimate is 2 trillion galaxies in the universe. From 1 to 2 trillion in less than 100 years? As Socrates in ancient Greece is supposed to have said, wisdom is knowing how little we know. Planet Earth is, by comparison, the equivalent of a billionth of a pinhead. Look into the night sky. Look at that blaze of stars and lights. Do you see everything that exists in the space that you are looking at? And most people would say, yeah, well, of course, mate, yeah. And yet, that is not even fractionally true. According to mainstream science, the electromagnetic spectrum is 0.005% of what exists in the universe, in energy and other forms. But visible light, which is the only frequency band that we can see, is a tiny smear of the 0.005%. Humans are basically blind to what exists.
This could be some simulation.
It could. Do you entertain that?
Well, the argument for the simulation, I think, is quite strong.
This is real? When I touch that
It feels
wood?
very real. Where are you? Where are you really?
Right.
You aren't anywhere.
Well, where is...
You're in the computer.
What defines where you are? But meanwhile, your experience is
Why do you
radically
think
different.
you're where you are right now? You might not be.
I'll spark up a joint if you keep talking. Your manager's going to come in here. We might have to lock the door.
Right now, you think you're in a studio in LA.
That's what I heard.
You might be in a computer.
We experience what is apparently a physical world, a solid physical world where everything is apart from everything else. And it appears to be outside of us, but it's not. Not in the way we experience it. The world out there that we experience as out there is actually in here. What is Wi-Fi? It's information carried in radiation fields. But you get a piece of technology called a computer, and it will tap in to those radiation fields, and it will decode them into a form on the screen which is absolutely nothing like the field is in its prime form. And we are doing exactly the same to create the reality we think is so real. We live in a sea of information, of possibility, of probability, just like Wi-Fi. And through what I call the biological computer, the decoding processes of what we call the body, we are decoding information from that Wi-Fi field and putting it on our screen, which exists in here. When that construct takes place, we perceive what we believe to be an external world around us, but actually it's only going on in our heads. Think of the ear. The ear is taking vibrational information that we call sound. It's turning it into electrical information. It's communicating it to the brain, which then hears the sound. There's no sound passing between us. We hear sound only when we decode it. As I speak now, my vocal cords are creating a frequency field of information. Only when you decode those words in the way that I'm describing do you hear what I'm actually saying. We seem to be living in an external world of solidity when we're actually living in an illusory world, which in the decoded form is holographic. When you see how close virtual reality is now getting to the reality we're experiencing, and the people at the cutting edge of this field say it won't be many years before you won't be able to know the difference.
We have that HTC Vive here, and I've only done it a couple times, quite honestly, because it kind of freaks me out.
Sure.
My kids fucking love it, man. They love it. They love playing these weirdo games and walking around with that headset on. But part of me watching them do it goes, wow, I wonder if this is like the precursor. Just sort of like if you look at that phone that Gordon Gekko had on the beach.
Yes,
and then you compare
the big
that.
cell phone.
Yeah, you compare that to like a Galaxy Note 9.
Sure.
Like how the fuck did that become that, right? And I wonder when I see this HTC Vive, I'm like, what is that thing gonna be 10 years from now when we're making fun of what it is now? What is it? How ingrained and how connected and interconnected is this technology going to be in our life?
It will be, at some point, indistinguishable from reality.
How do they manifest these virtual realities? By using exactly the same systems of decoding that we use to create this one. The gloves hack in to the touch senses. The headsets hack in to the sight senses and to the ear senses. And so what these games are doing is they are hacking in with an alternative source of information into these decoding senses that we use to create this reality, and that can appear to be so incredibly real. You're going to see people react to what is merely information being fed to their senses. Physics of computer games and the physics of our reality are basically the same. This is the revolution, and its time has come. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for coming. Thank you. Thank you.